Our final inductee tonight, the voice of the Kansas City Royals, Denny Matthews. He has broadcast the Royals since the very first game, a win over the Minnesota Twins in 1969. I was going to school in Richmond, Missouri at the time, and I got home in time to hear the Royals win their first game. Always listened to the Royals there on the Philco there in the house, and went outside and listened to the Cardinals if we could pick up KFEQ on the car radio or wait till KMOX came up. But Denny and Bud, and later Denny, Bud, and Fred White, they had a huge impact on my career, right along with Harry Carey, Jack Buck, and Mike Shannon. And later I got to work with Mike, and that was a great thrill. And I know Mike was a good friend of Denny's as well. But Denny Matthews, he made things very, very simple. And one thing he taught me, in my first big league game, I got to call a game with Jack Buck and Mike Shannon in Cincinnati in 1983. It was right after the Louisville Redbirds, the team I was broadcasting, drew the millionth fan. First time in minor league baseball they had drawn 1 million fans. And I called a George Hendrick double like it was a fast break in the Final Four. I was so amped up. And Jack Buck looked at me, "Slow down, kid. You're going to wear them out. You have 162 of these." And I thought then what Denny once told me, it's all as simple as ground ball, deep short, left field, base hit. Very simple. Keep it simple. And that tells the whole story. Well, Denny Matthews is the voice of the Kansas City Royals. I am so pleased that he's with us here tonight. Let's take a look at Denny's video. Let's roll it.
Along with the voice of the Cardinals, John Rooney. I'm Mike Claiborne, and we also have the voice, John Rooney, of the Kansas City Royals, the most recent inductee of the Missouri Broadcasters Association Hall of Fame.
Denny Matthews is with us. Denny, good to see you.
People always ask me my favorite moment. I have to go back to Game 1, April of 1969. The Royals' first game was my first game.
Good afternoon, everyone, from Municipal Stadium in Kansas City, where this afternoon the Kansas City Royals play their first American League game in history against the Minnesota Twins. This is Denny Matthews with Bud Blattner and the Kansas City Royals warm-up.
I was a young kid working hard to be successful, hoping that I could survive the first month of the season. And needless to say, I was pumped up. I was like in heaven. You know, the best part was that I was the first person who ever said the Royals win.
All right, that was my first Major League broadcast with Buddy Blattner.
What was that like for you in your first game? Were you nervous? Did you have a chance to think about it? Sometimes people think about it a little too much, but what was it like for you?
Well, I did write down my name so I wouldn't
That's
forget it.
a good start.
That's a good start. Hi, everybody. This is Denny Matthews, and I was on my way.
Over the next 40-plus years, Matthews truly became the voice of the Royals. And his uninterrupted run as a broadcaster in Kansas City is one of the longest in the history of baseball. His is the voice of summer in Kansas City and throughout the Midwest. In 2007, Matthews received the Ford C. Frick Award from the National Baseball Hall of Fame, taking his place in Cooperstown among the greatest baseball broadcasters of all time.
And you've meant a lot to the fans and to the broadcasters in the state of Missouri and on the Kansas side and throughout your Royals network.
Yeah, and you don't take that for granted. You better not. I mean, if you do, you've done the wrong thing, though these many years. But yeah, I grew up with Cardinal baseball, and I probably was laying in front of a radio when I was 10 years old, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was like getting a college education without having to pay tuition. That was a pretty good deal. And you're not interested in broadcasting when you're 10 years old. You want to grab a glove and get a few guys in the neighborhood and go out and play. And it never occurred to me broadcasting might be fun until I was in college. So it's interesting how things evolve.
Ground ball third. Moustakis has got it to first. Royals win it. Royals win the series.
High fly ball. Motley going back to the track. No outs to go. The Royals have won the 1985 World Series, and they converge on the mound and hold an impromptu celebration.
Congratulations again on the Hall of Fame. More importantly, thank you for being part of what we do, and continued success, sir. And thank you for what you've meant to not only me, certainly John, and all the people who listen to Kansas City Royal baseball.
And thank you to you, Bud Blattner, for letting me sit behind you in 1971 and observe what was going on at Old Municipal Stadium in Kansas City, because when I got a dose of that, that's exactly what I wanted to shoot for, is to work in a Major League broadcast booth, and you guys were so gracious.
And thanks to Buddy Blattner for allowing a goofball from Illinois Wesleyan University to come into the booth and sit down with him and try to broadcast Big League Baseball.
Please welcome to the stage the voice of the Royals and our newest inductee in the NBA Hall of Fame, Denny Matthews.
Well, thank you and good evening. And John Rooney, as he just mentioned, came into the broadcast booth with Buddy Blattner and I, and he'd ask us questions. He was in there for a couple innings. Between innings, during commercial breaks, he would ask us questions, and after he left, I asked Buddy, I said, what did you think of that young man? And Buddy thought for a second. He said, you know what? I think he's got a great future behind him. And I said, wait a minute. Bud, he's only 9 years old. If he ever achieves puberty, his voice is going to change. He's not going to sound like he just sounded in our booth. Well, you know what? He did achieve that. And look what happened. The rest is history. John Rooney, folks. Excellent, one of the best. Buddy Blattner was so good to me, and as most of you know, he was born and bred St. Louisan. And I had learned so much from Buddy Blattner. He was, in fact, his wife said, you are the only son that he ever had. Bud had 3 daughters, and he said, this really touched me. He said, you were the son that Buddy never had. But he was just a tremendous help to me through the years, and a wonderful guy and a national broadcaster. John Rooney and I think that Buddy Blattner was the best basketball broadcaster maybe of all time. Right, John? No question. Yeah, Buddy Blattner was sensational. He did the St. Louis Hawks, and what was great was he had a nickname for every player, and they all fit. The nicknames weren't forced, they fit. And it was just so much fun listening to him. People have asked me over the last few years, how long do you want to do this? Well, my answer is, this may come up later, but I was just married in mid-November of last year, and my lovely wife, Amy, who I knew for a long time before we got married, I met somebody who knew more about baseball and the Royals than I did. And I thought, you know what? You better latch on to this. And she is amazing. And I guess I'll go ahead and do this as long as she'll let me. So thanks, Amy. Another question that I get asked, the most memorable baseball personality you met, and that takes a lot of thought. And I finally thought, you know, it's got to be Whitey Herzog, because Whitey managed both the Royals and the Cardinals. Whitey Herzog, as a manager, was always 3 innings, 4 innings maybe, ahead of the guy in the other dugout, their manager. Whitey was amazing. One time, and one time only, did I ever know of Whitey being speechless. He's managing the Royals. We're in New York. We're playing the Yankees. And in the 70s, there was a tremendous rivalry between the Royals and the Yankees. I mean, everybody remembers the postseason, Royals and Yankees. The intensity of the regular season games was maybe even more intense than postseason. But we had a little outfielder named Jim Wolford. He was a leadoff man. We're in the 9th inning. The game's tied 2-2. And Jim Wolford hit a line drive into that big, huge gap at the old Yankee Stadium, left center field, and the ball rolled forever. And Wolfie ended up at third base. So tie game, 9th inning, and we got a chance to take the lead. But wait a minute. Billy Martin comes out of the Yankees dugout, and I'm thinking, oh boy, now what? What's Billy Martin up to now? Well, he was pointing at second base. Al Clark was the umpire at second base. And they called Wolfie out for missing second base on his way to third on the triple. Well, Whitey was enraged, and he busted out of the Royals dugout, and he's headed straight for Al Clark. Our first base coach was Steve Boros, and he intercepted Whitey about halfway between the dugout and second base, and he said, "Whitey, before you get after Al Clark, there's something you should know. Wolfie didn't touch first base either." And that's the only time that I've never known Whitey to be speechless. And then Whitey came to the Cardinals, and he would go out to Grant's farm and meet with Gussie Bush maybe once or twice every homestand. They'd sit and play cards in the morning, and Gussie would say, "Now, Whitey, you're doing a great job, and do you need anything?" And Whitey would say, "Well, Whitey could never have enough left-handed pitchers in his bullpen." And Whitey would say, "Well, we need another left-handed." "Well, Whitey, you get whatever you want." So the Cardinals are drawing $3 million. They're playing great, exciting baseball. Gussie Bush is as happy as he can be, and they're playing cards one morning. And Gussie said, "Whitey, you're just doing such a great job for me." He said, "I've been thinking about this. I would like to give you a lifetime contract." And Whitey said, "Whose lifetime, mine or yours?" Great question. 95-year-old Gussie Bush offered Whitey that contract. Yeah, great logical question. But yeah, Whitey was tremendous. And yeah, he was, like I said, he was just way, way ahead of every other manager, and he just had one of the greatest memories ever. He could remember somebody doing something in 1975. So-and-so, George Brett was hitting 275 on April the 17th, and you look it up, and he was right on it. I mean, he was just incredible. And so I want to thank everybody for attending tonight. It's been a wonderful time, and I really accept this honor with humility, and it's just been a great fun night. Thanks, everybody.
Take the seat, the first chair right there. And we're going to wrap up this evening by having a few more stories from Denny. A good friend of Denny's and mine, Max Usler, taught journalism at the University of Missouri and moved on to Kansas, where he's still teaching young broadcasters a lot about sportscasting. He was our producer for the Warren Powers Show in 1978, as that was my first endeavor in doing a coach's show, and learned a lot from Max. Please welcome Max Usler and Denny Matthews with some more stories here.
Folks, I'd like to point out of how I dressed for the occasion tonight. I have my St. Louis Cardinals red tie on and my Kansas City Royals shirt there. So, well, no, I'd work both sides of the state.
That's a good look, I'll tell you what. Some guys look good in anything.
That's for sure. And also I need to mention as a prelude, Denny participated in a fundraising program that we had 2 weeks ago. I work in Dayton Moore's See You in the Major Leagues Foundation. Denny was one of our celebrity guests. And when I saw that he came in, I went up to him and I said, "Denny, has John Rooney told you that I'll be interviewing you tonight?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Are you worried about that?" And he just smiled. And I really don't know what that smile meant, Denny. So I hope you haven't been worrying all week about that. I know a lot of you folks know the story of Denny during his time with the Royals. I want to focus on some of the events that have led up to that, and some things have come after that. So the first thing, just seeing your Little League picture up there, were your brothers a big influence on you in getting interested in baseball, or was that you?
Well, my dad was the first All-American baseball player at Illinois State University. In fact, he had a chance to sign a professional contract with either the Cincinnati Reds or the Chicago White Sox, but something called World War II came along, and that took care of that. He went into the Navy, and by the time he got out of the Navy, then I was around, and he went to work at State Farm Insurance Company in Bloomington, Illinois, where I grew up. And I have 3 younger brothers, and my dad taught myself and my 3 younger brothers how to respect the game of baseball, how to play the game of baseball. He was a wonderful influence.
So when you're listening to Harry Carey on those Cardinal games, are you thinking, "Oh, someday I want to be a Cardinal"?
Well, my dream job, when I went to Kansas City, my dream job was, if you do a decent job in Kansas City, I was growing up right between Chicago and St. Louis, so I heard the Cubs, the White Sox, and mostly the Cardinals, because the Cardinals had an affiliate in Bloomington, Illinois, WJBC, and we had a Cardinal game on. I was 3 years old and the Cardinal game was on. I had no idea what it was, or I couldn't care less. But I grew up listening to the Cardinals, yeah, and because of my dad and because of WJBC.
You know, I had kind of a similar thing. I lived just down the road near Galesburg, and my dad, in an effort to encourage me to do more work on the farm, mounted a radio on the Ford tractor, and it only got one station, WGIL, which I later worked for, and it only carried the Cardinal baseball. So I listened to Harry all the time, and during the breaks I'd do my play-by-play.
Yeah, Harry Carey, Jack Buck, Joe Garagiola worked there for 2 or 3 years. He was terrific. You talk about a great analyst, Joe Garagiola. So, yeah, I was getting a wonderful education just laying in front of the radio and listening to the Cardinals every night. I didn't care about broadcasting. All I cared about was going out and playing. And when you're 10 years old, you don't think broadcasting, you think get some friends together and go play.
And when you were playing baseball growing up, was that kind of the number one sport on your mind?
Yeah, it was. I loved baseball and played in high school, and I had a chance to play in college too. So, yeah, we played on a pretty good level of college baseball. We played Big Ten teams and SEC teams, so it was really high-grade baseball.
And you went all the way across town to go to Illinois Wesleyan to school.
Yeah. Yes, the Harvard of the Midwest. No, well, not really. But.
No, that's what Knox called themselves, was the Harvard of the Midwest. I don't know how that happened there. But then I don't know what lightning bolt struck you, but you ended up playing football at Illinois Wesleyan also. How did that happen?
Nobody ever said I was smart, but I didn't play in high school football. And I thought, yeah, college football looks like fun. Well, what happened was there was a confluence of things that happened. Illinois Wesleyan never had a wide receiver before. They never had a wide receiver offense. The pros were going to the wide receivers, and so they decided to do that. Had a wonderful quarterback with a great arm, Vic Armstrong. He convinced me, because we'd play catch. He was a Sigma Chi fraternity brother of mine. We'd go out in the backyard and play catch with a football. And I caught everything that he threw, and he threw a pretty crisp, firm football. And he said, come out, it'll be fun. And deep in my heart, I thought it might be, and so I did, and we did, and it worked out very well. And really, because I played football, WJBC allowed me, that became kind of a story that this knucklehead comes out for football and does really well.
I can see why that's a story.
Yeah, and so they thought, well, we do a lot of basketball. There are 4 high schools and 2 universities in the Twin Cities of Bloomington Normal. And so they did maybe sometimes as many as 3 basketball games a night. Some of them were taped, and I could sit there and do what I did. And my last 3 years in college, in between playing football and baseball, I had a chance to broadcast basketball. So what a great combination.
That's kind of what I was doing up the road there a little bit too. That is interesting. Now, then, what was your major at Illinois Wesleyan?
PE.
And
PE and speech.
What were you going to do with that major?
Well, there was PE courses were tough. We had theory and practice of football, theory and practice of basketball, sports officiating, really tough subjects. I did pretty well in those. Now, you talk about the social sciences, political sciences, not so good, but somehow, some way we made it.
And folks, this is a guy just bragging about going to the Harvard of the Midwest and majoring in that. So then after you graduated, did you have enough momentum that you were already working in radio?
I had a chance to work at WJBC for about a year, and then I went to Peoria, Illinois, and worked there for a little over a year. Then I had a chance to go to St. Louis and do weekend sports on Channel 4. That was the CBS, and I did the weekend sports Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I just commuted between Bloomington Normal and St. Louis, and that was another great experience. And then shortly after I did the St. Louis gig, the Royals hired me.
But you didn't have to do weather to do sports. You got lucky.
Well, unlike you, I didn't do weather.
But Denny, I'm trying. in my 50-plus years of teaching, I had a lot of students who wanted to go into broadcasting. I don't ever remember anybody taking their first job from small market radio and jumping to the major leagues. How in the world did that happen?
Well, again, I'll go back to Buddy Blattner. And he told me ultimately that there were about 250 applicants. He had been hired by the Royals as the #1 guy. And he told me there were about 250 applicants who had applied for the #2 job. And they kept whittling away and listening to tapes and looking at resumes and pictures and all that stuff. And it kept going month by month. And now we're down to 100, now we're down to 50, now we're down to 25. And then I got a call from Buddy Blattner one night, and he said, I want you to come down to St. Louis and talk to me. And I said, when, what time? And he said, come down on Friday and get here about 4:30. Well, I drove down, 3-hour drive. I told my dad, I'll be home around 10 o'clock. I was in my mind trying to figure out how long Buddy and I might chat and the length of the drive. And we sat in Buddy Blattner's basement and talked and talked and talked. And finally, about 6:30 in the morning, he said, we got an extra bedroom. Do you want to stay here and get some sleep before your drive back? Well, I was so jacked up by that time, I wouldn't have been able to sleep. And, but I think I'll just drive on home. So I did drive back to Bloomington. My dad was out in the yard when I got home, and I said, see, I told you, Dad, I'd be home about 10 o'clock.
Well, before we wrap this up, Max, we have to talk about a big event that took place this last off-season.
I had the opportunity to go to the coolest wedding that I've ever been to in my life, and I've been to many, but the Denny Matthews, Amy Baker wedding topped them all. It was at Royals Stadium, included the wedding cake that was a batting helmet and a bat was there. And then the thing that I was most impressed with is you were not allowed to wear a coat and tie to that wedding.
Oh.
Denny, I've never seen Denny in a tux, and I certainly didn't that day. You're supposed to wear your favorite Royals garb. So in honor of Denny, I wrote one of my Royals sweatshirt that said founded in 1969, because I thought that was it.
That works.
So,
Amy, come on up.
Come on up and join
Come on
us
up.
there.
Come on up real quick. Amy Matthews.
Yeah, the wedding with their names on the scoreboard and everything like that. It was wonderful. And I do have to tell one story about the introduction of Denny and Amy. Ryan Lefevre was the host, the MC of the event, and he starts out talking about how he and Denny's career kind of had a parallel, because Denny grew up listening to Harry Carey. Ryan, whose dad was in LA in baseball at that time, Ryan grew up listening to Vin Scully. And he said, and I'll never forget that night when Kirk Gibson hit that home run to win the World Series game and limped around the bases. Vin was completely silent till Gibson started to come home, and Vin said, ladies and gentlemen, the impossible has just happened. So ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the Amy Baker, Denny Matthews wedding. Ladies and gentlemen, the impossible has happened. So Denny, let's start. How did the impossible happen?
Well, it's the first marriage for both of us. So we're both trying to find the runway, I think, to see what goes on, but it's been wonderful. But yeah, we've known each other for so long, and I said, and don't deny it now, she knows more about baseball and the Royals than I do. She was a wonderful softball player. Yeah. Don't play catch with her, ever, because my youngest brother, Mike, they were out in the yard a couple of years ago. You've heard the term, she throws like a girl?
Yeah.
She does not throw like a girl. And after they played catch for 10 minutes, my brother came into the house and he showed me his hand. His hand was red. I mean, he had a glove on when he was playing catch with her, obviously, but it didn't help. And she was playing burnout with him, I think. But no, don't play catch with her. she's just a wonderful athlete, and as I said, she knows more sports. She tells me things about the Royals before I know. So, but
And Amy, what's your version of how the impossible happened?
Well, we dated for about 17 years, so I always wanted to get married, but I think the belief with all of his family and friends, and starting to be a belief with me that this man was never going to get married. I was like, I gave him 15 or 17 years, and they were wonderful years, and I just thought, well, I guess I maybe should be content with just spending life with him unmarried, but I would rather be married to him. And finally one day he comes home from work, and he does his normal routine, puts his stuff away, and he told me to go in the living room. I'm like, okay, that's kind of different. But so I was in the living room, and he comes into the living room wearing a baseball glove, and I'm like, what are you doing? And so he comes toward me, and he gets down on one knee, and he opens up the baseball glove, and there's a ring.
Denny, I didn't have you categorized as a hopeless romantic.
Well,
I'm sorry.
It was what a wonderful creative mind I have. I gave her a baseball glove with the box, and the ring was in it, and I said, there was a little note that said, "You are a wonderful catch." Get it? Baseball glove. Yeah, any of you guys that aren't married, if you want to use it, go ahead. It did work.
Very.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it at that point. So.
But Amy, your impressions of Denny going into the NBA Hall of Fame and what this weekend has been like?
It has been so much fun. I'm so proud of him. He has accomplished so much in his life, and he definitely deserves this. I'm his biggest cheerleader, obviously, but I mean, everybody has just been so kind, and it's been quite an honor, and we don't take it for granted. I mean, this is wonderful.
Yep, take nothing for granted.
Yeah, never
Absolutely.
take anything for granted.
Denny, Amy, Max, thank you so much. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
And thanks for the
Denny
honor
Matthews.
tonight. And thanks to all the other, and congratulations to all the other recipients tonight. Great honor. Thanks, folks.